I didn't mean to eavesdrop. God knows I was too tired to stand. But I froze in the dark hallway, fingers still wet from wringing out his washcloth, when my husband chuckled into the phone and said, "Relax, babe. She's not a wife. She's my free maid." If you've ever thought you'd never do something reckless for love or for justice, hit like and subscribe. Because tonight, the woman he underestimated woke up. I pressed my palm to the wall because the floor tilted under me, because the word maid slashed at something that had already been bleeding for years. In the bedroom, his mother's lamp burned like a watchful moon. In the living room, his wheelchair gleamed, polished by my hands, like a trophy for some contest I never entered. And from behind the study door, his voice, fluent and amused, the soft scrape of a chair leg, moving. My husband, paralyzed from the waist down, was standing. And if I didn't trust my eyes, I trusted the sound, the sure, easy slide of a body that has forgotten how to pretend. My name is Emily, and this is the last version of me that apologized for taking up space. I didn't always live by the clock of someone else's pills. 4 years ago, I had a job in product design and a terrarium of bright green moss on my desk. I had shoes with paint on them, a calendar that belonged to me, weekends that smelled like coffee and sawdust. Then came the accident. A delivery truck ran a red light, and my husband, Caleb, was lucky, everyone said, to be alive. Lucky. It's funny how luck and love can become synonyms when you're too scared to say another word, debt. We moved his bed to the living room so he could watch the garden through the window. I slept on a narrow cot by his side, waking at midnight, 3 and 5, to turn him so he wouldn't get bed sores. I learned the alchemy of medications. I kept a chart and a binder and a smile. I taught my hands to be gentle even when my back screamed. I sold the terrarium. His mother, Lorraine, visited every afternoon at 3 to bring Tupperwares labeled cow and to stage whisper, "Some women just aren't built for sacrifice, Emily, but you're trying. That's what counts." I boiled potatoes that tasted like chalk and collected bills like autumn leaves. When friends asked, "How are you?" I said, "We're managing." When they said, "You look tired," I said, "We're fine." When I cried in the shower, I told myself it was just steam. Let me be fair. There were good moments. There were days when Caleb smiled at the squirrels and asked me to describe them, and I told him about their quarrels, and he laughed. There were quiet mornings when he watched me brew coffee like it was art. There was one night he told me, voice hoarse, that I had saved his life. But there were other nights too. Like the one when I found a pair of high heels under the couch that weren't mine and told myself I was imagining things because trauma makes you forget what's real. It was Tuesday when the truth started growing teeth. I had gone to the pharmacy for his refill. The pharmacist frowned at the screen. "We filled this last week." "No," I said, confident and bone-tired. "We do the 7th, the 14th, the 21st. Someone picked it up, signed for it. She turned the screen and I stared at the signature. Caleb's handwriting, clean, slanted, proud. He can't," I said. "I guess he can," she said. I walked home with a paper bag of gauze I didn't need. I almost went inside and yelled. I almost called a friend. Instead, I took the long way, past the dollar store, past the laundromat, past the window bright with neon letters that read, "Open," as if the world could be that simple. When I got home, he was in his chair, blanket over his lap, TV on mute. He looked up at me and smiled. "Traffic?" he asked. I got the wrong day, I said. He nodded. I burned dinner because the clock sounded like footsteps. That night, at 2 a.m., when I stood to rotate him, he was already lying on his side, as if gravity had done me a favor. I told myself I must have turned him at midnight and forgotten. I tucked the sheet around his hips and whispered, "We're managing." 3 days later, I found the heel scuff on the back hallway baseboard, high enough to belong to someone walking, not wheeling. I wiped it clean like a confession. Then came the phone call, the free maid comment, the chair scrape, the shift of weight of a standing man. And in the breath that followed, the last of my denial evacuated, quiet as smoke, but just as poisonous. I didn't open the door. I memorized the cadence of his laugh and went to bed on my cot. I lay awake, hands folded, and watched the ceiling until the ceiling watched me back. He was pretending to be paralyzed. He had been lying to me for God knew how long. And I, the careful one, the binder keeper, the pharmacist's favorite, had missed it. Because love makes a better blindfold than silk. The next morning, I made oatmeal and cinnamon toast and pretended my world was still intact. He ate with appetite, suddenly robust. Lorraine arrived at 3 and did her inspection. "You're doing better," she said. "Keep it up." "I will," I said. Then I went into the bathroom, locked the door, and slid the mirror to the side so I could reach the safe hidden behind it. I had kept all the papers no one ever reads: mortgage addenda, his business filings, tax records, healthcare proxies. I sat on the floor and read like my life depended on it, because it did. Caleb's marketing startup had been struggling before the accident. The pity donations and disability settlements had created a cushion. In the last 8 months, though, there were withdrawals that I didn't recognize, gentle as fingers lifting bills from a wallet, rent for an apartment across town, transfers to an account in a woman's name, J. Hart, jewelry purchases, a vacation deposit. The man who couldn't lift his legs had taken our money for a life without me. My hands shook, then they stilled. I had spent 4 years learning how to keep someone alive. Keeping myself alive suddenly felt like the more complicated task, but complexity was a language I spoke. This is the part of the story where I could say I confronted him, hurled the papers at his chest, screamed, but I didn't. Rage is loud. Strategy whispers. If he could plan in secret for 8 months, I could plan for 3 weeks. I divided a notebook into 3 columns: facts, hypotheses, levers. Under facts, pharmacy signature, rent for apartment, J. Hart, mother's complicity unknown, wheelchair tracks versus scuffs, phone call. Under hypotheses, he can stand, walk without assistance. He's milking disability for money and concealment. He plans to empty the joint account, then leave. Under levers, legal, power of attorney, fraud, financial, separate account, physical, cameras, social, Lorraine, friends, narrative, his story versus mine. I bought 2 nanny cams shaped like air fresheners and placed one in the hallway facing the study, one disguised as a smoke detector in the living room. I ordered the cheapest set because irony pleased me. He had always mocked my bargain hunting. I opened an account in my name only at a credit union across town. I redirected my freelance payments there, because in the hours he napped, in the inches of space left over from caregiving, I had been slowly rebuilding a portfolio no one knew about. Small logos for small companies, a lamp restored and sold, moss growing again in a jar in the pantry in case I needed to remember what life felt like under glass. I called a lawyer whose office smelled faintly of glass cleaner and second chances. We spread papers across a metal table, and she showed me the legal architecture of escape. She said, "Gather proof, quietly, and stop turning him every 3 hours." I stared at her. "He'll get bed sores." "Not if he's mobile," she said. I went home and at midnight pretended to sleep. At 1, the camera caught him rising from the bed in the living room like a resurrected saint. He stretched, long, luxurious, and I watched him roll his shoulders back intact. He padded into the kitchen, made a sandwich. At the sink, he rinsed the knife and turned his head toward the ceiling, toward the smoke detector that watched him. He smiled and winked. My stomach turned. He knew about cameras. He had planned for everything, including my curiosity, but he hadn't planned for my patience. The second camera, the one in the hallway, watched him in the study. There, he didn't look up. He paced. He spoke to someone on video. 3 weeks, he said. Then we're out. She won't fight it. She signed everything. She's too devoted to think. The study door has a keyhole that looks like a blind eye. I pressed my cheek to the door that night and whispered, I am learning how to see. Stories are weapons as sharp as knives and safer to carry. Lorraine, who performed devotion like a pageant judge, was my first test. I lured her with the pot roast. She sat at our table and looked around like she'd curated the museum of my life. I worry about Caleb. What will he do without you if, heaven forbid, you take ill? He'll manage, I said, and watched her face. Her fork paused. He needs you. I know. He told me you were thinking of going back to work. Disgust curled her lip around the word work. I was. I said, not anymore. Relief transformed her features. She reached across the table and patted my hand. That's the spirit, dear. She was either his accomplice or his audience. Either way, she too thought I was furniture. I smiled back and added Lorraine as leverage to my notebook. I compiled a photo album for social media, 4 years of devotion, me pushing his chair through a farmer's market, me measuring pills beneath a calendar of butterflies, me fixing a wheel lock with duct tape and stubbornness. I didn't post it. I just built the narrative so it would be ready to move.
Ghosts don't slam doors. They dim hall lights until the house becomes a maze. They move 1 spoon from the left drawer to the right and wait for you to doubt your memory. They switch his sugar with salt and watch him make a face at his coffee, then apologize and bring honey. Ghosts are patient. I adjusted his chair brakes so that they would stick in the locked position for exactly 40 seconds after release. Enough to make him think he was safe, not enough to keep him from jolting when the chair rolled mid-transfer. The cameras recorded him cursing because the chair had a mind of its own. I left exactly 1 grocery bag heavier than the others so that he would grunt as he lifted it, standing, in the study doorframe. I marked the floor with a pencil line covered by a rug to see how far the rug would shift when crossed. Each night, it moved. Each morning, it returned. I was not poisoning him or plotting violence. I was gathering evidence and reteaching my spine the shape of upright. On a Tuesday, when the air smelled like hot metal, I called the disability insurance investigator from a payphone outside the laundromat. I told her anonymous things. I sent an untraceable USB drive loaded with 2 weeks of video clips and a spreadsheet of transactions. I included a recording of the free maid call because I had found the app that backed up his audio automatically to the cloud. He thought I didn't know about. He had hidden me inside bathrooms and bills. I would no longer hide at all. The investigator left the voicemail 2 days later. We've opened the case. I didn't smile. This wasn't joy. This was calibration. The night everything broke was ordinary until it wasn't. Lorraine had dropped off soup and judgment. Caleb had asked me to rub his shoulders. because sometimes he forgot which parts were supposed to be broken. I rubbed gently, thinking of how easy it would be to press too hard. I didn't. At 9, he pretended to fall asleep in front of a crime show. At 10, the study lamp clicked on. At 10:08, I took the binder to the porch and breathed until the crickets sounded like a verdict. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "We're parked. Are you ready?" I swallowed. The investigator had said they sometimes did surprise checks. I had said, "He's astute." She had said, "So are we." I typed, "Yes." From the hallway camera, I watched the front door open. Caleb's chair sat vacant in the living room like a prop between scenes. He stepped out of the study in gym shorts and a t-shirt, back straight, jaw clean, no tremor. He crossed the room in 6 normal strides, then stilled at the doorknob. The knock made him flinch. "Mr. Hale," a woman's voice said, crisp and official. "Insurance compliance. We've had reports of fraud. May we come in?" He looked at the hallway, toward the camera but not at it, toward me. I tilted my head and smiled, small and private. "Now's not a good time," he said. "We have a court order." His eyes went flat the way land goes flat after a burn. He opened the door. 2 agents walked in with clipboards and a camera worn low on a lanyard, so you might mistake it for a pendant. "We'll need you to demonstrate your current mobility, standard audit." He said, "I can't walk," with perfect practice. "Of course," she said mildly. "We'll start in the study." And she turned her back, expecting him to follow, forcing him to either admit he couldn't or to walk. He stood very still. "Sir," she said halfway down the hall. He sighed, dramatic, annoyed, the sigh of a man delayed at TSA, and followed her into the study. The lanyard camera saw everything. So did mine. Lorraine, who had a key, chose that moment to arrive and pushed the door open 2 inches. "I brought lemon bars," she called, then froze at the sight of strangers. Her gaze snagged on Caleb's exposed calves. She made a sound like a pan sliding off a stove burner. "Caleb?" He turned to her slowly, as if turning could fix it. "Mom," he said, "go home." She pressed her hand to her throat. "You told me." Then she saw me standing at the end of the hall, calm as a closed book, and something lit her eyes. Not empathy. Blame requires less imagination. "What did you do to him?" she hissed. The female agent addressed her without looking away from Caleb. "Ma'am, we're conducting an audit. Please wait outside." Lorraine sputtered, then stomped onto the porch, her lemon bars sweating under cellophane. The agents filmed him walking. They examined the bathroom rails he never needed. They ran through their checklist while he answered in a voice that grew progressively more brittle. When they left, he shut the door, leaned against it, and stared at me. I saw then, with the clarity that should have arrived years ago, Caleb was not a monster with genius for cruelty. He was a little boy who had discovered a trick, and because it worked once, believed it made him invincible. He had built a house of mirrors and then confused it for a fortress. "What did you think would happen?" he asked, finally, voice flat and dangerous. "I thought truth would look better in daylight," I said. He laughed without humor. "You stupid." "No." My voice surprised us both with the steadiness. "Just done." He moved toward me, then remembered there was no chair to push, no blanket to arrange, no leverage he could pretend not to hold. He stopped. "You ruined my life," he said. "I preserved it," I said. "I put it back into the shapes you claimed. You should thank me for consistency." "You'll get nothing," he said. "You signed the disability forms. You'll go down with me." I didn't sign alone. I stepped aside so he could see the open safe, the copies of his transfer approvals, the video thumbnails lined like teeth on my laptop screen. "You forgot the cameras and the smoke detector." He tilted his head. You think insurance will fix you? You think they'll take your side? I think fraud has a way of clarifying sides. And I think judges like stories with clean arcs. He stared at me for a long time. Who are you? He asked. And I almost laughed because I had been asking myself that every night for 4 years. I'm your wife, I said, until the morning. The morning arrived like rinsed glass. I woke up on the cot, not because I had to, my alarm was off, but because my body didn't know what to do with softness. Sunlight hesitated at the curtains. In the kitchen, I boiled water and made coffee the way I liked it. Too strong, a little bitter, honest. I set out 2 mugs, then put one back. I packed a small bag, the binder, my notebook, a terrarium I had coaxed back to life. I taped an envelope to the refrigerator that contained the list of the day's appointments. 9 a.m., your lawyer. 10:30 a.m., a friend. Noon, your mother. I added, I recommend honesty, and drew a smiley face that looked like a scar. At 8:40, I heard tires crunch on the driveway. The investigator again, this time with a uniformed officer and a stack of forms. Caleb did not meet them at the door. He was learning. They came anyway. Lorraine appeared at 8:50, demanded explanations, wept, cursed, demanded again. At 9, my lawyer rang the bell and asked for Caleb's signature on a separation agreement she had drafted overnight. He refused. The officer read him his rights for insurance fraud. He didn't look at me while any of this happened. When he finally did, it was with a strange mixture of awe and hatred, as if I were a magic trick he couldn't parse. Why? He asked, a different why now. Not why I had betrayed him, but why I had done it with such precision.
Because precision is the tenderest kind of mercy. It cuts clean. I kept you alive, I said. Now I'm keeping me alive. Lorraine turned on me then, ferocious. You've destroyed this family, she spat. I considered the 4 years I had spent preserving it like fruit in jars. No, I said. I just opened the windows. The rot did the rest. The officer led Caleb to the car. The investigator thanked me. My lawyer handed me a stack of next steps thick enough to double as a doorstop. The house stilled like a theater after the audience leaves, full of other people's breath. I sat at the kitchen table and tried out being alone. It fit. Not like a dress fits, snug and flattering, like a room fits, with corners you haven't explored yet. He cried once during a thunderstorm, when the whole house shook and the power blinked out. He said he was sorry for everything, sorry to make me small, sorry to bend me into shapes that hurt. I believed him because the storm made us both children. The next morning, he was rude to the physical therapist because she suggested he try standing with support, and he said his legs felt like bricks poured with spite. After she left, he asked me for tea and called me good girl. I wish I could tell that version of me something. Not to run, not yet, but to keep a map of herself she could consult later when names failed and care blurred. He watched a nature documentary about spiders. The females sometimes eat the males, he said, smiling at me over the rim of his mug. Maybe the males should learn to cook, I said, and he laughed. That was the whole scene. That laugh felt like a shared joke, a thin bridge that led nowhere. Lorraine stood in my kitchen and told me I was selfish for wanting to take a Saturday off to paint. Some women aren't built for sacrifice, she repeated, as if the phrase had pearls in it she didn't want to choke. I nodded. That night I painted anyway, in the garage, the door cracked open to the street, the smell of rain. I painted a chair and imagined sitting in it. I never did. I sold it on Craigslist. The buyer called it resilient. He meant sturdy.
Back in the present, my phone pinged with a message from a friend I hadn't seen in months. "Saw your post," she wrote. "Proud of you." She included a string of emojis that looked like flags and keys and a heart trying to breathe. I blinked. I hadn't posted anything. Then I realized the investigator had. Or someone had. The video of Caleb's miraculous mobility had made its way to the internet, shorn of context, ripe for jokes. I should have felt humiliated. Instead, I felt like a window had opened in a room I'd been afraid to name. I didn't want him to be a meme. I wanted him to be a person whose choices had consequences. I posted my album, after all. Not with captions that begged for pity, but with the simple truth. 4 years ago, I became a caregiver. Yesterday, I learned the man I cared for could walk. Today, I'm choosing myself. I turned off comments. I left the house. I locked the door. There are parts of revenge no one tells you about. The quiet afterwards is not triumphant. It's tender and awkward, like learning to walk again after sitting too long. My revenge wasn't an explosion. It was a reallocation. Every minute I had given to monitoring his bruises and mood, I gave to naming my own. In the weeks that followed, there were hearings. There were letters from the insurance company and from our bank and from people who once liked Caleb and now wanted to know if they still should. There was Lorraine, who filed for emergency guardianship of her son as if he were an errant minor, and lost. There were messages from J. Hart, which my lawyer advised me not to open. There was a settlement that protected what was left. There was a final meeting in a municipal building that smells like pencil shavings and old ambition, where a man with a badge explained the terms of Caleb's plea deal while Caleb kept looking at the door like maybe the life he'd ordered would arrive in a package if he waited. "Do you want to say anything?" the man with the badge asked me. I did. I wanted to tell the room that love is not a promise to tarry someone who won't stand. That marriage is not asylum for cowards. That women are not ambulances you can call and dismiss when the sirens embarrass you. I said no thank you, because I was learning when to speak and when to keep my voice for myself. After, my lawyer squeezed my shoulder. "You did well. You did right." I nodded. "Sometimes those aren't the same," I said, and she smiled. "True, but today they are." People asked me if I missed him. That's the wrong question. You don't miss the cage. You miss the bird you thought you were saving. I started running because my body had learned diligence in the space of the cot and needed to unlearn it under open sky. I painted a chair and sat in it. I took the terrarium out of the pantry and put it on a sunlit shelf where it belonged. I planted mint by the front steps because I wanted the house to smell like a decision. One morning, I walked past the mirror and didn't flinch. I had been flinching for years because the mirror was an indictment. Now, it was a witness. It watched me tie my hair back and go to a meeting with a small tech company that wanted a designer who understood patience. "I do," I said, and meant it. Sometimes in the grocery store, I saw a man in a wheelchair and my chest pulled tight with complicated threads. I would not let bitterness be my last language. I would not let his fraud infect the tender mathematics of care. People need help. People break. The difference is consent. One warm evening, months after the audit, Lorraine appeared on my porch holding a pie as if props could bribe the moon. I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. "I came to apologize," she said, then ruined it by adding, "for your sake."
I waited.
"He hurt you," she said reluctantly. But you made an example of him, publicly. That was cruel. I chose the mechanism he chose, I said. He built a spectacle. I turned on the lights. She glanced at the mints. You're not the woman I met 4 years ago. Neither are you, I said. She lifted her chin. I was proud of your devotion. I know. So was he. Where will you go? She asked. Not what will you do, not who will you be, just geography. Home, I said, and let her decide what that meant. She offered me the pie. I didn't take it. I said, your son is not my problem, not anymore. She left with the pie and the lemon bars and whatever elaborate story she would use to keep herself intact. I wished her nothing. That is not cruelty, it is silence where a war used to be. The last time I saw Caleb was in a courthouse corridor where light fell fat and indifferent through glass bricks. He was on crutches, performative, as if he couldn't shed the costume entirely even now. He saw me and hesitated like a man smelling unfamiliar weather. I have to pay restitution, he said without preamble, as if money could translate regret. The judge said, I know, I said. I didn't think you had it in you, he added, almost admiring and entirely wrong. You never looked, I said. He attempted a smile. You were always so good. No, I said, and watched the word land. I was faithful. That's different. He nodded, eyes shuttered. Are you happy? He asked, trying to turn our ruin into a kindness. I'm honest. Happiness can borrow that coat when it's cold. He opened his mouth like he wanted to say something softer, then closed it because he didn't know how. He limped away, and I let him go. I don't know if revenge is the right word. I didn't torch his life. I peeled off its false labels and left it on the right shelf. There are stories where the woman burns down the house. Mine was quieter. I turned on the gaslight and watched it flicker out under the daylight. But if you are waiting for a bang, here it is. It came not when the investigator knocked or when the judge spoke. It came when I sat at my table with a cup of too strong coffee and wrote my name on a contract for a project I wanted, for work that chose me back. It came when I realized my calendar had squares. I could color any shade. It came when a friend said, come over, and I did, and the evening unraveled without alarms. It came when I woke at 2 a.m. out of habit and lay there smiling because there was no one to turn but myself. There's a story I want to leave you with. It is small and ordinary and therefore holy. The day after Lorraine's porch visit, my neighbor's child, Molly, lost her ball under my porch steps. She knocked on my door like a sparrow. Can you help? She asked. We lay on the warm wood and peered into the shadow. The ball sat there, green and smug. I could have reached it with the broom handle, but I didn't. I showed her how to tie string to the handle and make a loop, how to catch the ball and drag it gently into light. She did it, face set, breath held. When it rolled to her palm, she lit up. I did it, she flung, and ran home. I stood there with the broom and thought about leverage, about how the right tools don't hurt what you're trying to save, and about how for 4 years I had used my body like a broom without a string, knocking things loose and watching them roll away, and how now I had learned to tie knots that held. If you're still here, you know the shape of the truth. I cared for my paralyzed husband for 4 years. He called me his free maid. He was never paralyzed. I stopped being free to him and became free to myself. People ask, would I do it all again knowing? There is no clean answer. Care taught me patience, and patience taught me attention, and attention saved me. Maybe that's the trick the story wanted to play. Turn the instrument of my entrapment into the key of my release. If you are listening with a lump in your throat because your life feels like a cot beside someone else's bed, here is my hand, palm up. You are not furniture. You are not payment. You are not proof of someone else's goodness. You are a person with a name that belongs on contracts and birthday cakes and the inside of a favorite book. If you choose to stay, may it be a choice. If you choose to leave, may it be a door you built. And if you ever hear someone call you a maid when you are a miracle, may you remember to become the ghost long enough to move the furniture. Then turn on the lights, open the windows, and live in the room you made. If that resonates, you know what to do. Like, subscribe, and share this with someone who needs the reminder that justice can be patient and still be loud. I am Emily. I was the devoted wife, then the ghost, then the architect. Tonight, I sleep in a bed with sheets that smell like lemon and lavender and nothing like duty. And tomorrow when I wake, I will not ask permission from a clock that doesn't have my name on it.